The desperate choices Zara Navarro stared at the university observatory ceiling, tracing familiar constellations projected across the dome while her phone vibrated relentlessly in her pocket. Another call from the hospital billing department. Another reminder of the crushing debt that grew heavier each day. Her father remained in the cardiac care unit. With a sigh, she silenced the phone and returned to calibrating the telescope for her graduate research, work that once brought her joy but now seemed trivial compared to her family's struggles. 2 months ago, her father had collapsed at his construction job. Emergency heart surgery had saved his life but decimated their finances, even with insurance. "Thought I'd find you hiding up here." Zara turned to see her roommate Jade standing in the doorway, the blue glow of the star map illuminating her concerned expression. "Not hiding," Zara replied. "Working. Some of us still have dissertations to finish." Jade approached, perching on the desk beside the telescope controls. "Your advisor said you've been here since dawn, again. The Sagittarius alignment only happens twice a year. I can't miss it. And the 3 hospital calls you've ignored? Can you miss those?" Zara's fingers stilled on the calibration knobs. "They can't get blood from a stone. I've explained our situation a dozen times, which is exactly why we need to talk about my offer again." Jade's voice softened. "The auction is tomorrow night. Madame Valeria still has a spot for you." "No." Zara shook her head firmly. "I'm not that desperate. Aren't you, though?" Jade gestured to Zara's worn sweater and the stack of past-due notices barely hidden beneath star charts. "Your scholarship covers tuition, not medical bills. Your dad needs that specialized treatment, and you've exhausted every grant and aid program available." Zara turned away, focusing on the telescope to hide the tears threatening to form. She had indeed tried everything. Extra research positions, weekend tutoring, even selling her mother's jewelry. Nothing came close to making a dent in the 6-figure medical debt. "It's just one night," Jade continued gently. "These men are wealthy beyond imagination. The starting bids alone could cover months of your dad's treatment." "Selling myself? Is that what my PhD is worth?" "It's not like that. It's companionship, conversation. Many girls never do more than attend events with these men." "Then why pay hundreds of thousands of dollars?" Zara challenged. Jade shrugged. "Status, exclusivity, the thrill of the auction itself. Look, you're brilliant and beautiful. You'd fetch one of the highest bids and Madame Valeria ensures everything stays safe and respectful." The observatory fell silent except for the quiet hum of the telescope motors. Zara gazed up at the projected stars, seeking guidance from the celestial bodies that had always provided direction in her life. Her phone buzzed again. Not the hospital this time, but her mother likely calling from Dad's bedside with more bad news about treatment options they couldn't afford. "What would I have to do?" Zara finally asked, her voice barely audible. Jade's expression softened with understanding. "Just show up. Madame Valeria handles everything else." 24 hours later, Zara found herself in a luxurious penthouse suite being transformed by stylists and makeup artists into someone she barely recognized. Her wild curly hair had been tamed into elegant waves, her face enhanced with subtle makeup that emphasized her deep brown eyes and full lips. The dress they'd selected, a midnight blue gown adorned with crystals that mimicked a star field, was more expensive than anything she'd ever touched. "Nervous?" asked a blonde woman being prepared beside her, looking completely at ease in this environment. "Terrified," Zara admitted. "First auction?" When Zara nodded, the woman smiled sympathetically. "Just remember, you have more power than you realize. These men may bid, but you still set the boundaries afterward." Madame Valeria swept into the room then, her silver hair swept into an immaculate updo, her calculating gaze assessing each woman like fine merchandise. She stopped before Zara, tilting her chin up with one manicured finger. "You clean up beautifully," she observed. The ingenue scientist. "They'll be intrigued by the contrast. Such a brilliant mind in such a lovely package." Zara's stomach churned at being appraised like a rare specimen, but she remained silent. Her father's face, pale and weak against hospital pillows, flashed in her mind. For him, she could endure this. The auction venue occupied the top floor of a building that seemed to exist in a different world from Zara's university campus, just miles away. Crystal chandeliers illuminated a room filled with men in custom tuxedos, their combined net worth likely equivalent to the GDP of a small nation. Zara stood backstage with 7 other women, listening as Madame Valeria addressed the crowd with practiced charm, explaining the rules of the evening with elegant euphemisms that did nothing to disguise the transaction at its core. One by one, The women were called forward, presented, bid upon, and claimed. The amounts thrown casually into the air made Zara dizzy. Enough money to fund entire research departments being spent on a single evening's companionship. And now, gentlemen, we have someone truly special, Madame Valeria announced as an assistant guided Zara forward. I present Zara, an astrophysicist tracking the mysteries of distant galaxies. Her brilliance is matched only by her natural beauty, a rare combination indeed. The spotlight blinded her, making the audience a sea of shadowy figures. Bidding began immediately, numbers climbing rapidly as Madame Valeria orchestrated the auction with subtle encouragement. 200,000, called a voice from her left. 300, countered another. The bidding continued, rising to heights that seemed absurd. Sarah stood perfectly still, trying to disconnect from the reality that strange men were bidding on her company like she was a painting at Sotheby's. When the amount reached 700,000, the room began to quiet, bidders dropping out one by one. 750,000, Madame Valeria announced. Going once, 1 million. The voice from the back of the room was quiet, yet carried effortlessly across the space. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by complete silence. Zara squinted against the spotlight, trying to see the speaker but could only make out a tall silhouette standing apart from the others. Madame Valeria recovered quickly, though even she seemed surprised. $1 million. Going once, twice, sold. As Zara was led from the stage on unsteady legs, she caught whispers from the other. Women, that was Elijah Caney. Nobody's ever seen him at these events before. Why would he pay that much? When he never even... Her heart hammered against her ribs as she was guided to a private lounge to await her buyer. The astronomical sum would cover her father's treatment and rehabilitation many times over. But what would this mysterious man expect in return for such an investment? The door opened and Zara straightened her spine, preparing to face whatever came next. A tall figure entered, his features thrown into sharp relief by the dim lighting. Elijah Caney moved with the fluid grace of a predator, his tailored tuxedo emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean frame. His face might have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and perfect symmetry. But it was his eyes that captured Zara's attention. They were an unusual shade that seemed to shift between gray and something almost violet, holding an intensity that made her breath catch. "Dr. Navarro," he said, his voice the same quiet, commanding tone that had silenced a room full of billionaires. "I believe we have much to discuss about the stars." The proposition. Zara stared at Elijah Caney, momentarily speechless. His words hung in the air between them, unexpected and puzzling. Of all the things she had anticipated him saying, a reference to her astronomical work wasn't among them. "How do you know I'm an astrophysicist?" she finally asked, voice steadier than she felt. Madame Valeria only mentioned it in passing. Elijah moved further into the room with measured steps. Despite the opulence surrounding them, plush velvet furniture, crystal decanters of amber liquid, art pieces worth small fortunes, he seemed almost uncomfortable in the setting. "I know considerably more about you than that," he replied, maintaining a respectful distance. "You're completing your doctorate in astrophysics at Arlington University. Your dissertation focuses on unusual radiation patterns from the Sagittarius constellation. You've published 3 papers on stellar anomalies, each one more insightful than most career scientists produce." Zara shifted uneasily. "You researched me?" "Thoroughly," he admitted without apology. "I don't spend $1 million without due diligence." He gestured to the seating area, silently asking permission before sitting. Zara remained standing, the starlight patterned dress suddenly feeling too exposed. "What exactly do you want from me, Mr. Caney?" "Your expertise," he said simply. "Not your body, if that's your concern." Relief washed through her, quickly followed by confusion. "There are less expensive ways to hire a consultant." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Perhaps, but none that guaranteed immediate access to someone with your specific skills, while ensuring complete privacy." He leaned forward slightly. "I have an observatory, private, state-of-the-art, located at my estate in the mountains. I've been tracking something unusual, something I believe correlates with your research." Zara's scientific curiosity stirred despite her wariness. "What kind of phenomenon?" "Periodic radiation bursts from a specific point near Sagittarius A. Patterns too regular to be natural, too complex to be coincidental. Her breath caught. This described exactly the anomaly she'd been documenting. Signals that her advisors had dismissed as equipment malfunction or statistical noise. "You've seen it too," Elijah observed, reading her expression. "The academic community isn't ready to acknowledge what we both know is there." Zara moved to the window, staring out at the city lights that obscured the stars. "Even if what you're saying is true, why the auction? Why not approach me at the university? Because what I'm proposing requires discretion and dedicated time. I need you to come to my observatory for at least 3 weeks, working exclusively on this project." He stood, joining her at the window but maintaining distance. "Your university connections would complicate matters, raise questions. And my participation in this auction doesn't complicate things?" She challenged. "It provides a cover story that few would question," he countered. "A wealthy man bidding on a beautiful woman. Society expects nothing more from either of us." Zara turned to face him fully. "And the $1 million? Yours regardless of whether you accept my proposal. Consider it a grant for your research and—" He paused. "Other pressing needs." The implication was clear. He knew about her father's medical bills too. Zara should have felt violated by this knowledge, yet something in Elijah's tone conveyed understanding, rather than exploitation. "What exactly would I be doing at this observatory?" she asked. "Analyzing data, helping calibrate equipment, applying your unique perspective to observations I've been collecting for years." Elijah's expression remained neutral, but intensity radiated from him. "I have technology not available in academic settings. Resources that could advance your research by decades." Zara's mind raced. If he truly had tracked the same anomalous signals, if his equipment could provide clearer data. "I have conditions," she stated firmly. "Name them." "My father's medical care is guaranteed regardless of outcomes. I retain rights to publish any discoveries. I have complete freedom to leave if I'm uncomfortable at any point." Elijah nodded. "Already arranged, agreed, and understood." He reached inside his jacket, producing a slim folder. "The preliminary contract, if you'd like to review it. Your lawyer can examine it fully tomorrow." Zara accepted the document, scanning terms that were surprisingly straightforward and generous. "You've planned this meticulously." "I leave little to chance, Dr. Navarro. Just Zara, please." "If we're going to work together." "Zara," he repeated, her name sounding different in his precise diction. "Then I'm Elijah." The moment stretched between them, an unexpected current of understanding passing silently. "Your father's medical team will be notified tonight that his expenses are covered," Elijah continued. "A private medical transport can move him to Cedar Ridge Medical Center tomorrow. They have the most advanced cardiac rehabilitation program in the country." Zara's eyes widened. "That's not necessary." "It is if you want him to make a full recovery," Elijah interrupted gently. "Their success rate is unmatched." Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. After months of helplessness, the possibility of her father receiving the best care available was overwhelming. "Why go to these lengths?" she whispered. "What's so important about these signals?" Elijah's expression shifted subtly, something vulnerable briefly visible beneath his controlled exterior. "Some questions can only be answered by looking to the stars," he said quietly. "I believe you understand that better than most." Dawn found them in Elijah's private helicopter, soaring over forests toward distant mountains. Zara watched the sunrise paint the landscape below, still processing the whirlwind of the past 12 hours. After signing preliminary agreements, she'd been escorted to her apartment to pack essentials, then taken to the hospital where she witnessed her father being informed of his transfer to the prestigious Cedar Ridge facility. The relief and joy in her parents' faces had confirmed she'd made the right decision. Whatever strange path lay ahead beside her, Elijah studied something on a tablet, occasionally making notes. In daylight, away from the artifice of the auction, he seemed different, focused, almost austere in simple black clothing, yet somehow more approachable. "We're approaching Caney Observatory," the pilot announced through their headsets. Zara looked ahead as they crested a mountain ridge, revealing a stunning modern structure built into the mountainside, glass and steel harmonized with natural rock. The facility crowned by several dome observatories gleaming in the morning light. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It's functional," Elijah replied, though satisfaction colored his tone. "Completely self-sufficient with minimal environmental impact." The elevation and distance from light pollution provide optimal viewing conditions. As the helicopter settled onto a landing pad, Zara noticed no other buildings within view, only wilderness stretching in every direction. Isolated, she observed. Necessarily so, Elijah responded. But you'll have full communication access and transportation at your disposal, should you need to leave. He led her through the facility, past laboratories filled with equipment she'd only read about, computing systems beyond university budgets, and finally to the main observatory dome where a massive telescope that would make her department head weep with envy dominated the space. Words failed her as she approached the instrument reverently. The Hayes-Kincaid reflector telescope, Elijah supplied, with modifications of my own design. There are only 3 of these in the world, Zara whispered. 4, now. A hint of pride crept into his voice. Yours to work with for as long as our arrangement continues. Zara turned to him, suddenly understanding the magnitude of what he was offering. Not just money for her father, but access to technology that could validate her theories and establish her reputation in ways years of academic struggle never could. When do we start? She asked. Something like approval flickered in Elijah's unusual eyes. Tonight. The phenomenon has a predictable cycle. According to my calculations, we should observe another burst at approximately 0200 hours. Zara nodded, anticipation replacing her lingering uncertainty. Whatever Elijah's true motives, the chance to observe these signals with such equipment was worth the risk. Until then, he continued, my assistant will show you to your quarters. Rest, review the data files I've prepared, and prepare for a long night of stargazing. As he turned to leave, Zara called after him, Elijah, thank you. Regardless of what happens next, thank you for helping my father. He paused, his back still to her. Sometimes the greatest discoveries require unexpected journeys, he said quietly. Your father's recovery and your presence here are merely first steps toward something far more significant. With that cryptic statement, he disappeared through a doorway, leaving Zara alone beneath the massive dome, wondering exactly what kind of journey she had embarked upon. Celestial discoveries 7 nights into her stay at Caney Observatory, Zara found herself more intellectually stimulated than she'd ever been. Elijah's equipment had indeed captured the same radiation anomalies she'd been tracking, but with far greater clarity and detail. The patterns were undeniable, rhythmic, complex, and utterly unlike any natural phenomenon documented in astronomical literature. The sequence repeats with variations, she explained, manipulating the holographic display in the observatory's analysis room. Here and here, see these modulations? They're too precise to be random. Elijah stood beside her, close enough that she could detect the subtle scent of sandalwood that seemed to accompany him. Over the past week, his reserved demeanor had gradually relaxed as they worked together, revealing a brilliant mind that matched and sometimes exceeded her own. They're getting stronger, he observed, reaching past her to expand a section of the data visualization. Each cycle shows approximately 7% increased intensity. His arm briefly brushed hers, causing an unexpected flutter in her stomach. Zara attributed it to exhaustion. They'd been working through the night, tracking another burst of the mysterious signals. At this rate of increase, she calculated quickly, the next major peak should be visible even to conventional telescopes within 45 days. Elijah's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Too soon, he murmured, seemingly to himself. Too soon for what? Zara asked. He straightened, professional distance returning. For conclusive analysis. We need more data before presenting findings. Zara studied him, sensing there was more to his concern than scientific caution. After a week of close collaboration, she'd begun to notice patterns in Elijah himself, how he tensed when certain frequencies appeared in their readings, how his normally precise movements became almost agitated during peak signal periods. You should rest, he said, changing the subject. We've been working for 17 hours straight. I'm fine, she protested, though fatigue indeed pulled at her. I want to run another spectral analysis on Zara. The gentle firmness in his voice stopped her. The signals will still be there after you've slept. Even brilliant minds require rest. Something about his concern touched her unexpectedly. Throughout her academic career, Zara had pushed herself relentlessly, often working until exhaustion. No one, not advisors, not colleagues, had ever simply told her to rest. A few hours, she conceded. Then we continue. He nodded, satisfaction briefly warming his features. I'll have breakfast prepared for you at noon. As Zara turned to leave, curiosity overcame professional restraint. Do you ever sleep, Elijah? I've yet to see you take a break. A shadow passed over his face. I require less rest than most. Another mystery about Elijah Kane, she remarked, surprised by her own boldness. Along with why a tech billionaire built a private observatory in the middle of nowhere and tracks obscure astronomical phenomena. His lips curved slightly. Perhaps I simply appreciate the stars. No one spends billions appreciating something without reason, Zara countered. Elijah considered her for a long moment. Join me for dinner tonight and I might share some of those reasons. The invitation hung between them, weighted with implications beyond professional collaboration. Dinner, she repeated. Not in the lab? The observatory has a perfectly functional dining room we've neglected. 8 o'clock. Later, rested and curious, Zara found herself standing before the small closet of her suite, contemplating the evening. Why had she packed the burgundy dress? It wasn't practical for observatory work, yet she'd included it on impulse while hurriedly gathering belongings. Deciding against overthinking, she slipped it on, simple but elegant, complementing her warm brown skin and dark curls. This wasn't a date, she reminded herself, just dinner with a colleague who happened to be brilliant, mysterious, and unnervingly perceptive. The dining room surprised her, a glass-walled space perched on the mountainside, offering spectacular views of the rugged landscape and approaching night sky. A table was set with understated elegance, soft lighting creating an intimate atmosphere without obscuring the stars beginning to appear overhead. Elijah awaited her, having exchanged his usual utilitarian black clothing for a charcoal shirt that accentuated his lean physique. Something shifted in his expression as she entered, a momentary break in his composure that sent warmth spreading through her. You look... He hesitated, seemingly searching for appropriate words. The dress suits you. Thank you, Zara replied, accepting the glass of wine he offered. This room is incredible. I didn't realize it existed. I rarely use it, he admitted, guiding her to the table. My work doesn't typically involve dining companions. They settled into conversation that flowed more easily than Zara expected, discussing stellar phenomena, theoretical physics, and the limitations of current astronomical technology. Elijah's knowledge was comprehensive, his insights razor-sharp. For the first time in her academic career, Zara felt intellectually matched, perhaps even occasionally surpassed. As they finished their meal, she decided to press gently on his earlier promise. You mentioned sharing your reasons for building this place, she reminded him. Elijah's expression grew contemplative as he gazed out at the star-filled sky. After a long moment, he spoke. When I was 7 years old, I saw something in the night sky that couldn't exist by conventional understanding, a pattern of lights moving with purpose. His voice remained measured, but underlying emotion resonated in his words. When I told my foster parents, they assumed I was creating fantasies to cope with trauma. Foster parents? Zara asked softly. He nodded. I was found wandering alone in a field when I was approximately 5 years old. No identification, no memory of family or origins. Just a strange medallion around my neck with symbols that matched the lights I later saw. The vulnerability in this admission stunned Zara. The enigmatic billionaire was revealing pieces of himself she suspected few had ever seen. Scientists eventually determined I had experienced a traumatic event, resulting in selective amnesia, he continued. I was placed with foster families, then attended schools where my differences became increasingly apparent. Differences, Zara prompted gently. His eyes, those unusual eyes that seemed to shift between gray and violet, met hers directly. Accelerated cognitive development, unusual physical resilience, sensitivity to certain electromagnetic frequencies that others couldn't detect. That's why you track these specific signals, Zara realized. You believe they're connected to your origins. Elijah's expression remained carefully neutral. I built this observatory to find answers conventional science couldn't provide. For 20 years, I detected nothing unusual. Then 3 years ago, these patterns began. First subtle, now increasingly pronounced. Zara absorbed this revelation, scientific skepticism warring with the sincerity in Elijah's voice. Have you considered every rational explanation? Yes. A hint of wry humor colored his tone. Psychological projection, pattern recognition gone awry, confirmation bias. I've subjected my observations to every critical framework. The signals remain, objective and increasingly undeniable. Something in his expression, a blend of scientific determination and personal vulnerability, touched Zara deeply. Whatever his theories, Elijah's search for answers felt profoundly human. "Show me the medallion," she requested. Surprise flickered across his features before he reached beneath his collar, withdrawing a silver disc suspended on a simple chain. He hesitated briefly, then removed it, placing it in her outstretched palm. The metal felt unusually warm, its surface etched with intricate symbols arranged in a spiral pattern. Something about their configuration triggered Zara's pattern recognition abilities. "These look like..." She trailed off, mind racing. "Like what?" Elijah prompted. Zara met his gaze. "Like coordinates. Astronomical coordinates, but using a different reference system than we typically employ." Excitement colored her voice. "May I analyze this properly?" For the first time since meeting him, Elijah smiled fully, a transformation that momentarily stole her breath. "I was hoping you would ask." They abandoned dinner, returning to the laboratory where Zara carefully scanned the medallion, inputting its patterns into their analysis systems. Hours passed as they worked side by side, the professional boundary between them softening with each shared discovery, each moment of intellectual synchronicity. Dawn found them standing before the massive telescope, watching as it automatically tracked the coordinates they'd extracted from the medallion's patterns. "It's pointing directly at the source of our signals," Zara whispered, awe in her voice. Elijah stood close beside her, his presence somehow both grounding and exhilarating. "I've been searching my entire life," he said quietly, "waiting for these signals, trying to understand who or what I truly am." Without thinking, Zara reached for his hand. He stiffened momentarily in surprise, then relaxed, his fingers intertwining with hers. "We'll find your answers," she promised, the words feeling right despite their scientific improbability, whatever they are. Elijah looked down at their joined hands, then back to her face, something unguarded and wondering in his expression. "I believe you might," he said softly. "That's what frightens me most.